In a new age of watchmen, a team of individuals, pooling their talents and abilities, come together to bring analysis, reaction, and comedy to the fold. This is their chronicle. This is Accounting Arc.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Accounting Arc. I'm pleased to be here with Byron and Liz again, and this time we thought that we would talk about non-accountants, because a lot of people don't realize that there's quite a bit of non-accountants that are involved in accounting, even at accounting firms. Accounting firms are no longer just accountants. And actually, all three of us are accountants, but we're all non-traditional accountants as well. So it's sort of related, but not. I don't know, Byron, Liz, what are you guys seeing with some of these non-accountants?
I think one of the interesting things that I've seen as I've worked with, non-accountants in the profession is there's a really huge appreciation, I think, for the profession once people begin working with it, which I always find fascinating, especially with people coming from other professions. But there becomes this almost like the window opens and they realize the kind of complexity and the nuance of what's going on within the profession, and the respect for it really goes up, which always fascinates me. I find that so many non-accountants that work in the profession become unbelievable cheerleaders for the profession despite not being CPAs, or despite not being CPAs.
Yeah, well, and I think the progression of accounting firms in general pulls in consultants in a lot of different arenas, right? And if you look at like any of the big consulting firms, they all either originated in accounting or have some kind of CPA or accounting affiliation or branch. Because we get to have really amazing relationships with lots of businesses, and our clients are awesome and ask for help in many arenas. So I think there's a natural evolution of people outside of the traditional core accountancy or CPA track, or whatever you want to call it, the money people. Outside of that, you end up with all these intelligent, wonderful advisors that come into the fold.
I totally agree with that. I think that's the biggest evolution we're going to see, and I've been predicting that the accounting firms will actually become business services firms, where we're doing more than just the accounting. We already see a lot of that in the IT area. That was, to me, one of the first areas we really incorporated in, because we see a lot of maturity in the IT consulting practices, whether it's system implementations or cyber already in there. And then as we see things evolve, I see firms starting HR consulting practices, marketing consulting practices, and of course there was, as Liz mentioned as well, the management consulting piece, which was really more business strategy and bigger picture, that are all part of the Big Four. And we see a lot of it in the mid-size, even down in the mid-size firms now.
Yeah, but it's historical too, right? Like if you look at the history of firms like CPA firms and whatnot, they were all around business advisors, and the CPA designation gave them powers of, signing reports because they were already doing the consulting work. And then came, the independent standards, and that's a whole other conversation that started segmenting out how CPAs could perform. But it did actually mark a really interesting shift in the way that accounting firms functioned, away from the non-CPAs, away from the non-accountants. And the shift has come back full circle because we realize that there's a lot of benefits, although with better rules and better, ethical considerations and more light shown on what happens if you're doing everything for a company and the potential risk that happens there. But now that we have those standards and boundaries and understanding, and we know what what the potential biases could be, we can be better advisors all around and have those people back integrated into our teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that comes down to kind of drinking our own Kool-Aid in a sense, right? Because a lot of the messaging around the profession is, work with the experts and work with those who have specialized knowledge and focus on that. So, opening the opportunities to bring in experts from the outside to make sure the right people are involved in those conversations is really critical. And then having them inside the profession and being able to have that support is such a huge value. And Donnie, to your point earlier about IT and technology, I think it was probably over a decade ago when we started seeing firms begin to look at acquiring technology companies and getting involved with that. And what I've actually found even more fascinating is the number of people who were outside technology consultants who either through acquisition or new hire became part of the profession, and even after leaving those firms have remained specialists in the accounting profession for technology services, which I think is really special.
Definitely. And Liz's comments actually makes me think of the and now I'm trying to remember core competencies of CPA, which I often think of as core competency of accounting. And one of those is that we are the center point of collaboration or integration for different disciplines. And if you go kind of earlier, if you think about like estate planning, it's often the accountant that's coordinating with the lawyer, with the investment managers to figure out, okay, what's the best estate plan for this? How can we have these wealth transitions occur? How do we need to set up the law, not the laws, the wills and the trusts to comply with the law? Thus, we're working with the lawyer, but really we're trying to figure out and help navigate the family dynamics and, what do we want and what's to the best tax advantage? And I think that's just continued in this space that Byron's talking about, where, all right, are we bringing tech in? How are we bringing tech in? What do we need to do? And then working with other advisors and to really deliver a stronger business platform to move forward.
Yeah. And I think, if we wrote back into like the history lesson, because I am like fascinated by history, right? Accounting systems, when you look at the IT side, like that was one of the first places where real independent innovation happened with computers for businesses, because the biggest thing to track is money, right? Coming in, coming out. Banking systems, stock market systems, all of that was like very quickly developed because there was a huge opportunity to automate and make way more efficient manual processes that were previously kept in old stock ledger books. And, when you start going back and back, but so we frequently overlook the fact that accounting was one of the first professions in the business world to get that type of innovation. Like clearly they were using computers way before that for engineering, military purposes, sending people to the moon, right? All of that. But when we look at it from a business development innovation perspective, accounting was really the first place to get those systems. And we've maintained that level of use of systems and requirement at this point to do anything useful, I would say, in our profession is to understand the system.
Oh, you're so right, Liz. You reminded me of a friend of mine who is now retired, but was a CPA in the 60s and 70s, worked for Pitney Bowes. And he was actually part of the team that built the first IT systems at Pitney Bowes for managing their financial information, which was just fascinating to hear those stories from him. But you're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of places where CPAs or accountants have been involved in these technology implementations long before they were used in other places in these organizations.
Right. And I think that bringing us back to non-accountants being in the industry, right? Like we have and have always had IT professionals involved in accounting firms, right? And a lot of them were internal facing, but a lot of them were also external facing and helping figure out, what's going on there. And then we have auditors with qualifications to audit IT systems, right? Which is like, yeah, technically they're CPAs, right? And also there's an extra level of understanding of IT that has to happen to get that certification. And I think that, fully embracing and understanding that our profession has a very rich and deep history with business advice and helping companies do better, interpret laws, make good decisions, have solid financial information, all of that ropes up into where we are today and helps us like think about what's going to happen next and how our profession will always, in my opinion, history will always repeat itself, right? So we'll always have full circles, but hopefully the next circle we're more educated and more aware of potential downfalls or risks or areas where we were blindsided in the past as a profession.
Yeah, that's really worrying me right now with seeing the rise of advisory again, is that we're going to see some of these scandals start to appear where there's lack of independence. But that independence is something that I think also differentiates us. It's something that I use as a advisory focused accounting firm to compete against some of the others. So when I go up, for example, against an IT firm, I'm like, we're not a vendor for anything, that versus go look at these other firms, they're selling or they're aligned to particular solutions. We're just trying to figure out what's the best solution for the client. And I think that integrity is something that the clients appreciate as well, because we're able to help them really look at what is the best solution for them, not what solution am I going to make money off of because I'm helping them get something.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and that comes back to conversations we've had previously just about, integrity and trust in our profession. And when you bring in outsiders from the profession inside the profession, we're kind of extending that integrity and trust to those individuals to make sure that we can maintain that, which is a delicate balance. And to Liz's point, history does tend to repeat itself. And, we've seen in the past where that has become a problem. So I think your concerns, Donny, are very, very relevant.
Do we want to, and this is a question, just to play devil's advocate, but do we want to extend that trust that SCPAs have worked our butts off for many years over to any other professions, right? Like, is that something we are conscious of and want to happen, or is it something that's just a byproduct of having, more advisors on the team?
I think it's a delicate balance. I do think that probably it is easily given away and not necessarily always very intentional and specific. I think some people are very intentional and specific around that and want to make sure that those, representing the profession are abiding by that level of integrity. But I do think that there's plenty of examples where people just unintentionally extend that maybe in a detrimental way.
That's where I think some of the move that we're seeing now into the ESG space becomes very important, and kind of, as Byron said, this delicate balance. Because when we start to look at the politicization of things like DEI, which is in the E, environmental, DEI in the S for social, and then with all this environmental stuff with carbon and the questioning of carbon, like both of those, the E and the S, have become very politicized recently. This is where I think it's important for our profession to really step up and to say, hey, we're not judging what people are doing. We're just making sure that the information that's being provided becomes very relevant. And a good example of that, or not relevant, but has integrity. And a good example of that is one of the big oil companies used to be one of the top environmental companies until reporting standards, which is part of our profession, made sure that they included subsidiaries. And once you kind of consolidated, you're like, oh, now you can really see the true impact, and they're actually not that positive for the environment.
So not all of us are dictionaries. Can you define your acronyms for us, please?
Sure. I think the one I use ESG, so environmental, social, and governance reporting. Was there other ones that I did in there?
DEI.
DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I would hope everyone knows these at this point, but also some people may not, and that's okay too, because some of us read things longhand and not the acronyms, like myself. Anyways, I appreciate that. And you are a dictionary for all of the acronyms and terms, and I think it's really incredible.
No, our profession is like filled with all these acronyms. I'm glad you reminded me to find them.
Is there do we have a professional dictionary that's not a farce? Like, do we have a real one and not like Urban Dictionary of Accounting?
Acronyms.
And
There's
if not,
probably
maybe
an
we should do an
opportunity
episode on that.
It was funny. I was actually watching a 60-minute episode where they were talking to some people from NASA, and they were talking about their acronyms, and I was kind of laughing because they were identifying NASA for their wide variety of acronyms that they have for everything. I was like, I don't feel like NASA is much different than the accounting profession when it comes to number of acronyms for just about everything.
I think all professions have their own dialogue, if I'm being, or dialect is the right word, for their particular sects. And sometimes you have to learn new acronyms for sure to communicate with them, which I've had to do in working in different industries in advisory, because, I'll be working with a new type of client and they'll say some acronym and I'm like, And at first I was a little scared to ask, but now I'm like, hey, I don't know what that means. So somebody please define it, because I probably understand the terms when I know what you're talking about. But
I was just thinking that our profession probably becomes worse because we work with so many others, we end up adopting all of their acronyms in, and then it just compounds on itself.
Yeah. Well, now I have a mission to go build a maybe AI built website of acronyms of accounting that's funny, not real. But yeah, I think back to the topic at hand, talking about, non-professional accountants in accounting as professionals. I think that the opportunity is huge, because when we're talking money and we're talking finance and we're talking, any kind of advisory, like whether it's tax or even if we're doing a financial statement audit, and for sure CFO type work or controller outsourcing, all of those, the people that we're working with rely on us and trust what we're saying. And that leads to them asking for other things. So they'll ask for referrals to lawyers or bankers, or advice on how to structure their loans, or, systems advice or operational advice or inventory management advice, or even some of the e-commerce companies that we work with ask about like warehouses and shipping and what it should look like and what they should be tracking and how to do that right. And that is not the role of an accountant to tell you how to inventory or how to design your contracts around inventory. But we do have professionals that do that, right? And they're not accountants and they're not certified in anything. So, they're just operators that have a lot of experience, that know what makes sense and what's the best road. So anyways, I bring that up to say, there's so much opportunity when you're working with money, because people will ask you for everything else. There's a lot of upsell, so it's a natural progression. And you mentioned HR lines, same thing. If we're doing payroll, they start asking us HR questions. And most of us are not HR professionals, so we have to learn a new thing, or we have to, hire someone that's not an accounting professional onto our team to do it, or just refer everything out.
But on that extends again when we started going to ESG. It starts to become, what's the best way to either reduce my carbon emissions and start to look at those types of things. In the DEI, this is bridging into the HR realm again. What are the right ways to structure things? And the visibility that we have, especially in a public accounting, I think the visibility that we have across multiple companies, across multiple industries, for me as an advisor, that's what makes what I do powerful, because I can look at something and go, well, this other client or multiple other clients solved it this way. There's a likelihood this will work for you. Or a lot of what we do in the innovation space now is we're looking across industries. Well, this industry has addressed this problem in this way. Can we adapt that and really look at how can we adapt that to this other industry and make it work for them?
Yeah, it's funny, Donnie, as you were describing that, an image that comes to mind all the time when I think about accountants is Fantasia, like the Mickey Mouse basically orchestrating so many different instruments and everything. And I do feel that in the accounting profession, we have these insights into so many different aspects of business that oftentimes we are kind of these orchestrators who are facilitating so many of these things because we see the ripple effect or implications of decisions in different departments and how they affect things. I think it makes it kind of fun and explains why we end up working with so many non-accounting professionals in the space.
I think it's super fun. That's the best part of my job, is to learn like strategic advantages and what all the different parts of the business are doing and why it's interesting. And then the pattern recognition, right? Like that's fun. It's also not what an accountant is supposed to do if you're reading like historical books about CPAs, but it is what I actually do as a CPA. So
Actually, if you think about it, the pattern recognition, that's really what we're doing when we're applying accounting standards, right? Because the standard kind of tells you this is the circumstances and this is how you treat that particular circumstances. And then the question is the client's circumstances match this scenario or that scenario? And this is where professional judgment starts to come in, right? Which is the scenario that makes sense, that is also legal, that I can actually put some basis behind and say, okay, I'm following this because it matches this, and this is why I think it matches that. So it's defensible.
and that's basically the entire CPA exam. Is this the better answer or is that the better answer? And go.
So let me flip it then. For people that maybe aren't accountants that want to work in accounting, what would be your advice to those people?
Run. I'm just kidding. It was totally a joke. I would say, find the area of business advisory or, whatever specific part of professional services that you're really good at and fascinated with, and then understand how the accounting profession can support that, whether it be measurement of, actual financial numbers or other data that could be used to effectively execute what your particular part of services is, and then partner deeply with them, right? Like, I know there's a lot of valuation experts that are working in accounting firms, which is a very natural result because you need good financial data to provide a good financial valuation, right? But that's not a certification most CPAs have, right? There's other things, right? Like legal, like if you're doing M&A work, very easily you need to rely on tax advice and understanding of tax code and structure to be able to structure the legal docs appropriately. So that's like a very natural fit. And we already spoke about systems, implementations, and data from that side, right? And so my advice is figure out your core professional service, what you do the best, and how accountants support that or augment it, and then partner very deeply with the right team to be able to do that effectively.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I got nothing else to add. Right on point.
And I agree. There's an accounting angle to everything. People just don't realize it, I think. And the more that they understand, because they think it's just about the money, but we're much more about business processes, controls around those business processes, and in the end, to me, about really enabling just success, whether it's success at the family level or success for a small business or even a large business. That's really what we're trying to do.
Totally. And by default, because we're enabling success of businesses, we're enabling success of the economy. So we matter, guys.
That sounds like a good ending point. So thank you guys for joining us for this episode. And we hope you non-accountants will start to join us accountants and really helping improve the world. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See ya.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.